visualize yourself surrounded by all sentient beings. With your father and male friends and family to your right and behind you. Your mother and female family and friends to your left and behind you. Those whom you have those whom you're most prone to become angry with, who you have the most difficulty with, sit directly in front of you, facing towards you. And then all the other sentient beings of the world, whom we depend on for every happiness, from ordinary happiness up to the happiness of full enlightenment. So all other sentient beings sit around you. And then try to generate a bodhicitta motivation, seeing that all of my own happiness, all my past lives, this life, all future lives, from just the simple pleasure of having shelter from the elements, eating food, drinking water, wearing clothes, up to every spiritual, the joy of faith, renunciation, bodhicitta, pure emptiness, so every spiritual realization up to full enlightenment, all comes about in dependence upon all sentient beings. And all of these sentient beings have been my kind mother, father, friend, brother, sister, from life to life. So try to generate the motivation that may whatever I do today, and especially by engaging in the practice of hearing, contemplation, and meditation this morning, may it all become a cause that I may quickly become fully enlightened in order to be of the greatest possible benefit to all sentient beings. So then with bodhicitta motivation, then we visualize in front of us representations of the three jewels of refuge, the three rare sublime ones, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So try to visualize in the space in front of you, Shakyamuni Buddha, seated upon a lone throne, upon which there's an open lotus blossom and a moon disk, representing wisdom and compassion. Then in front of Shakyamuni Buddha is a table upon which is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and from which resounds the sound of the sutras. So this represents the jewel, the refuge of the Dharma refuge, the Dharma rare sublime. And then Shakyamuni Buddha himself, where you can visualize other Buddhist, other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Buddhist masters seated all around Shakyamuni Buddha. Especially Maitreya and Asanga to Buddha's right, and Manjushri and Nagarjuna to Buddha's left. So this represents the Sangha jewel. So then try to bring to mind how the three jewels of refuge have the ability to protect one from the suffering of lower realms, from all the suffering of samsara, and lead one to the state of liberation from samsara and the state of full enlightenment. So then we'll recite this praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, and then we'll recite the Heart Sutra, and then offer a mandala, and go for refuge. So beginning on page 73. With the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata and Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious hunger, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, and the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise men, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, fate like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower rooms, the one path to sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community and tending virtue I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects. With supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame over there, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning in a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Heart of Perfection Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on mats of Vulture Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration of the categories of phenomena, all profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of lineage or daughter of lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, conditional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element, and so on, up to including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. how to completely pass beyond error, to reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Prayatara Om Gate Gate Paragate Padasan Gate Bodhi Swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasaya, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva Mahasaya Adi Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, sounding lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shadavadiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasaya Adi Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And then at the bottom of page 81, there's a prayer to the lying face Dakini. I prostrate to the gathering of Dakinis in the three chakras, who abide in the holy yogas of using space, by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation. Look after practitioners like Amara Hirchaya, Akasamana Sajadana Samara. By the teaching of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled and be pacified. Shantam Kuriya Swaha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And may we be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. So then we'll skip to page 98. To page 98. Page 98. At the top, there's a short mandala offering. This ground, anointed with perfumes, strewn with flowers, adorned with marrow, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha fielded offering. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect, pure Lamas, from the clouds of your compassion, that form the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dhamma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to the states of the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so that concludes the preliminary prayers for the teaching today. So we're explaining the Heart Sutra. Let's explain the Heart Sutra. So in this blue book, why don't we look at the actual words of the Heart Sutra that we're going to talk about today. So on page 1 in the blue book, we'll look at the actual sutra first. Page 1. And it's in the second section, after this pink. After the pink page, the next, there's the first section, at the end of the first section, there's a pink page. after that page. Yeah, that section. Then turn to page 1. In that second section. See that? It says, at the top of the page, it says, the heart of the transcendent and victorious perfection of wisdom. So, that page. So at that page on the, let's see, the beginning of the last paragraph from the bottom. So from the bottom, just go up 2 lines. It says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. So this is where I think Venerable Namjong left off last time. Does anybody remember? That's right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they told me. Okay, so yeah. So this is, according to Atisha's commentary, then what's preceded this line says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, and so forth. So everything that's gone before is the explanation of the perfection of wisdom for those of dull faculties, or for those of less intelligence, because it's a more elaborate or extensive explanation. And then from here on, where it says, from here onwards, then it's actually it gives 5 praises. It gives the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, right? So the mantra is kind of it's a way of expressing all of what's gone before in just a few words, in a very condensed way. But it's kind of like a hidden way. It's a little difficult to unravel what it says. So, because with just a very few words, it expresses all the meaning that's gone before. So Atisha says that for those of sharper faculties, or for those of greater intelligence, then just on the basis of the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, just a few words, they can understand all the meaning. So basically it says what's gone before up to this point is the heart of the Heart Sutra for those of dull faculties, and then what's to follow with the mantra is a kind of synopsis of that meaning for those of sharp faculties. Okay. So then, so it says, therefore, the mantra. Well, just to summarize, like what's gone before is, first there's an introduction of the place. So this is ostensibly, it's not clear who the speaker is, but most people say it's Kungo, Ananda, Buddha's attendant, Ananda, because he's the one at the first council after the Buddha passed away. There was a council held, and all the sutras that the Buddha had taught during his lifetime were recited. So all the sutras of the 3 baskets, all the sutras belonging to the Abhidharma basket were recited by, I think, Mahakashyapa, and then the sutras belonging to the sutra basket and the what's the 3rd basket? Vinaya basket. Yeah, Vinaya basket, there was someone else, I think. Maybe Guna Prabhupada, I'm not sure, someone else recited. But those belonging to the sutra basket, which include the Heart Sutra, they were recited by Ananda. Anyway, so at the beginning it says, thus said he here at one time, and then there's the place and who was there, and kind of it sets the scene. So that's like the preliminary, setting the scene. And then by the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to the Bodhisattva, so that begins the actual main part of the sutra. And then, so Shariputra asks this question, how should any son of a lineage or daughter of a lineage train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom? So there, the son and daughter, actually it just says son of a lineage. Shariputra says son of a lineage. So then, so Shariputra, son of lineage means basically a bodhisattva. Of lineage means, because the lineage here means just like if you belong to that one family lineage, like a Gupta family lineage, then you belong to that group of people who have descended from that set of relatives. And also, like if there's a head of the family, like a head of the Gupta family, and then you're in line to eventually become the head of that family also. So similarly, like here, the lineage means the Buddha lineage. So when it's talking about a son of the lineage, it's talking about bodhisattvas. Because bodhisattvas are those who have the same aspiration as all the people who've become Buddhas before. So all the people, every sentient being who has become a fully enlightened being, they've all done so on the basis of this aspiration to become fully enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings. So someone with that aspiration, then, as soon as they generate that aspiration, an ordinary sentient being, as soon as they generate the uncontrived thought of bodhicitta, meaning wishing, thinking that, you know, whatever, I'll use this life and all future lives, I'll strive to become fully enlightened in order that I can relieve all sentient beings from suffering. Then by having that attitude, they become a bodhisattva, and they belong to this Buddha lineage, right? So it's like they're in line to become a bodhisattva. It's not, to become a Buddha. So it's not like in an ordinary family where the way they become the head of the family is they have to wait for other people to die off or something. It's not like that. It's rather by fully developing, by training in the path. So we'll look at training in the 5 paths especially, and progressively advancing on the spiritual, the path. Eventually they become enlightened through their own effort, primarily. Right. So that's what when Shariputra says, how should a son of lineage train who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom? Son of the lineage means they're a male who is a bodhisattva. So he's basically saying, how should a bodhisattva train? And Avalokiteshvara replies by saying, well, not just a male, also female bodhisattvas. Any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage. So whether they're male or female, anyone who's a bodhisattva, they should train like this. And then he explains how to look at all phenomena as being empty of inherent existence. So where he says, what is it? It's in the third paragraph. It says, well, actually the end of the second paragraph. So Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the profound perfection of wisdom should view it in this way. They should correctly view those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent existence. So that's a very important line there. They should view those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent existence, right? So the 5 aggregates, right, are the aggregates of form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. And then the reason, so he's saying we should view those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent existence. So what is the also? Why does it say also? The also is including what?
Self.
The person and the phenomenon. Yeah, the person. He's saying not only the person. He's saying not only the person you should see as empty of inherent existence, but also the aggregates of the person. Right. So a person is basically we're made up of our body and mind. So our body it goes in the first aggregate of form. And then our mind can be divided up on the later 4 aggregates of feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. Those all are more associated with the mind, right? They have nothing to do with the body. So those are the basis for us as a person. So here when it says also, it says they should. So they means bodhisattvas should correctly view those 5 aggregates also as. So it's the question. Well, what does also refer to? Because usually we say, like, if we, say, oh, I'm also going to have pizza. If we just go to a restaurant and say to the waiter, oh, I'm also going to have pizza, then the waiter's going to be thinking, well, what did you order before that? That you're also going to have pizza, right? It doesn't, so they're saying also, it doesn't make sense unless there's something that went before, right? So here, it's not directly stated what went before, but what went before is actually the person, right? The person is empty of inherent existence. And then not only the person, but even the basis for labeling the person, their body and mind, or their 5 aggregates, those are also empty of inherent existence. And then it goes on to list all these other things that are empty of inherent existence. So, in short, he's saying that everything that you can possibly, everything that exists is empty of inherent existence, not to mention things that don't exist. Right? So, and it's by reflecting on this, meditating on this, becoming familiar with this recognition, and this insight, which is wisdom, which is the wisdom of emptiness. That's the main way a bodhisattva should train, right? So the main way a bodhisattva should train is looking at themselves, their own aggregates, and everything in the world he goes on to talk about the what is it? The six, what are they called? Bases. You could say the 6 sense bases, the four elements, the 6 kind of consciousness. Basically, there are 18 spheres, you could say. Spheres or elements, yeah. And then the 4 Noble Truths, then the 12 links of dependent arising, and then other things he lists, saying that those are all empty of inherent existence. Right? But this line is very important because this is, here also when he says, they should correctly view those 5 aggregates also, so the also indicates not only selflessness of person, also selflessness of phenomena, also is empty of inherent existence. So that phrase, empty of inherent existence, which I'm sure we've explained before, and Namjoon's explained before, but it's important to recognize that as being there, empty of inherent existence. And it occurs before, again, right, at the end of the first paragraph of this sutra, the paragraph beginning, thus did I hear at one time. So at the end of that paragraph also, then it says, Avalokiteshvara was observing the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and saw that those 5 aggregates also are empty of inherent existence. So there again you have the 5 aggregates also, that also refers to the person. And then empty of inherent existence. And then the second one, those 5 aggregates also is empty of inherent existence. So that empty of inherent existence, that explains the meaning of what it says when it says below, there's no this, no that, no I, no O's, no nose, no tongue, no mind. It doesn't mean that literally there is no I, there is no tongue, no mind, and so forth. What it means, the no's all are saying empty of inherent existence. Right? So you have to take the meaning that was expressed just once or twice above, and then affix it to all the negative particles below. Right? So when it says form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, conditional factors, and consciousness are empty. That empty is empty of inherent existence. And then, then below when it says there's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no, all those are empty of inherent existence. Okay, so those explanations have all gone before. Okay, so now we're at this section on the mantra. So again, the second line from the bottom of page 1, where it says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that completely pacifies suffering, should be known to be true, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata Om Gade Gade Padagade Padasangade Bodhiswaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom in that way. Okay, so that ends the mantra section. And then the next section is the Buddha's praising what Avalokiteshvara said. And then the last section, last paragraph there is the conclusion of the sutra. So we'll finish the explanation of the sutra today. And then next week, next Sunday, 2 weeks from now, then we'll just review the entire sutra. And that'll be the last session of this module on the Heart Sutra. Okay, so today I need to explain the mantra, and then the Buddha having said well said, and then the conclusion. So the last 2 parts are simple. The mantra, there's a sort of quite a bit of explanation about, so I'll spend most of the time explaining the mantra. Okay. So from the second line from the bottom of page 1, it says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. So what is the mantra of the perfection of wisdom? First of all, like, usually mantras we usually associate with tantra, right? Not sutra. So this is a sutra, and this is part of the sutra teachings of Buddha. But because it has a mantra in it, then there's some debate among past scholars about, well, does this sutra, does it belong to the tantric teachings of Buddha or to the sutra teachings of Buddha, right? And then some modern Western scholars also also kind of, yeah, there's the doubt that whether maybe the mantra was added in later. Maybe the original sutra, it didn't have this mantra in it. But then when Tantric Buddhism was flourishing, like around 600 AD, from 600 to 1200 AD, when Tantric Buddhism was flourishing in India, then maybe later scholars added in the mantra into the sutra. Because as one Western commentator I was just reading this morning, he points out that, the sutra, if you took out this whole section with the mantra, the sutra would flow perfectly well. That like, the line just above this, it says, all the Buddhas who abide in the 3 times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment through relying on the perfection of wisdom. And then if you skip the whole mantra section and skip down to, on page 2, the 2nd paragraph, then the transcendent victor arose from that samadhi and commended the bodhisattva, and so forth. The sutra would flow perfectly well. Like, you don't really need that section with the mantra on there for the sutra to be complete. Just wait. So, but then you find mantras in some other sutras. They also contain mantras, like in the Sutra of Golden Light, which we read regularly, or the Sangata Sutra. There are mantras in those sutras also. So it's not totally kind of forbidden for there to be mantras in sutra. And even in the Theravada tradition, in the Pali Canon, there are also some sutras, some mantras present. So the conclusion is this is not a tantra, right? This sutra is not a tantra because it doesn't teach any of the basic methods of Buddhist tantrayana, or the Buddhist Mahayana tantrayana, as almost the Buddhist emphasizes. So it doesn't teach any of the methods of tantra, and rather it teaches the main meditation of the sutra vehicle, and especially of the 6 perfections of the bodhisattva vehicle. It teaches the 6th primarily, the perfection of wisdom. So, yeah, this is a Buddhist sutra, not a tantra. But then, well, why does it have the mantra in it? Then again, probably as Atisha says, just to as Nagarjuna says in one commentary on the perfection, on this Heart Sutra, that if you're tired and you don't feel like reciting the whole sutra, then you just recite the mantra. So it's like for convenience, it's sort of saying. And it's a way of just giving the whole meaning of the sutra in a very few words. And I mean, what is the meaning of mantra? Yeah, exactly. What did you say, Sarah?
Protects the mind.
Protection, yeah. The old students, very, very good. Happy to see. Yeah. So man means mind, and mantra means to protect. It's a Sanskrit word, mantra. So man means, what did I say? Something like, well, basically it means mind, but mind, because any instance of mind arises because of the coming together of an object and a subject, right? Because there's the subjective sense consciousness or mental consciousness, then it meets an object, and then based on that it's produced an instance of awareness of something, right? So, but in short, mantra means mind, and then the tra means to protect. So how does a mantra protect the mind? It's basically because by reciting the mantra, if you reflect on the meaning, then your mind is seeing things as they are. Your mind is engaged with virtuous objects. Your mind is in a virtuous state. If you're thinking about reflecting on the meaning of the mantra, then instead of your mind wandering, like just kind of wandering haphazardly with no meaning, rather your mind is engaging with something meaningful and something that's virtuous, right? So by condensing all of the meaning of the Heart Sutra, which is the essential wisdom of all the Buddhas and all the Bodhisattvas, in just a few words that we can easily just repeat again and again and again, then by reflecting on the meaning, it becomes like an aid, a way of protecting the mind by easily reminding us to think about this meaning. So like that. So all the different, every mantra has some meaning, and different mantras have different meanings. So like the mantra of the Buddha of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, Om Mani Padme Hum, is more addressing, or the meaning is something more like the wisdom of emptiness and great compassion united, the union of compassion and wisdom. But here, this mantra, I'll explain below, but it doesn't really have, it doesn't expressly say anything about compassion or have words that mean compassion, but it's more emphasizing on emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness. Okay, but before the actual mantra comes, then there's praise of the mantra. The praise of the mantra in 5 different ways. So that's what we're looking at first on page 1, the second line from the bottom. It says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. So the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is this Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswaha. So that's and also the mantra, it can have different levels, right? So like on a conventional level, then the mantra is the words, these words, Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswaha. On a more subtle level, the mantra is the wisdom realizing the meaning of the words, right? That's the actual mantra. That's what we actually need to cultivate in our mind to protect the mind, is the wisdom which realizes the meaning of the words. And the meaning of the words is essentially that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, right? The ultimate mantra is that the fact that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence is the ultimate mantra. Yeah, I'll come to that. Yeah, I'll explain each word, each syllable. But before that, there's a praise. Okay. Sebastian, you have a question?
You said that it talks about the emptiness and that everything is inherently empty.
Well, not everything is inherently empty. Everything is empty of inherent existence.
Okay.
Yeah, slightly different.
You're saying this mantra depicts that.
Yes.
But there's also the metaphorical meaning of the paths.
Yes.
Each of them.
I'm coming to that. Yeah. I'll explain that also.
Also,
that's also there.
You made a statement that most mantras are in tantra and not in sutra.
Yeah.
And then after that you said, yes, some mantras are in the sutras.
Yes.
So why did you make the first statement?
Because most mantras are found in tantras, not sutras. I'm just making a distinction. Usually in mantras are found in the sutras. Now I'm going to mix it up even more. Usually most mantras are found in the tantras, which are a whole separate set of texts and teachings. But there's a few that are found in sutras.
Why is that so? Because the sutras would have been more accessible to a normal person, while the tantrayana, it goes after the sutrayana.
Yeah.
And the sutras are more for the average person.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. So because the practice of using mantras usually it's associated with other practices that are unique to the sutra vehicle. So it's not in the sutras the Buddha taught for the ordinary person to focus more on practices like not killing, not stealing, not lying, doing watching the breath, just kind of simple meditations. And then, but those as a basis, then it becomes a suitable basis for using tantra, for using mantras, and the different uncommon practices of the tantra vehicle.
Protecting the mind from non-virtuous thoughts also be a very dominant theme within Sutrayana.
Of course, but there's many different ways to protect the mind. To protect the mind, you don't have to recite mantras. You can also just, be mindful to not kill, not steal, not lie. Those are also ways of protecting the mind. Or meditation on, karuna, meditation on maitri. Those are also ways of protecting the mind. You don't have to recite mantras to protect the mind. Actually, that's probably the biggest mistake people make with regard to mantras, is that they think that just saying the mantra, without knowing the meaning, without thinking about the meaning, just from your mouth, just saying the mantra is going to do something to protect your mind, or to really benefit you in a significant way. And that's actually, for the most part, it's not the case. Of course, the words, because they mean something very profound, then just the sound and the words, they have some power, but it's nothing compared to the power of actually knowing the meaning and thinking about the meaning of the words. That's That's what's going to be much more powerfully protecting one's mind, not just the words.
Om Mani Padme Hum,
Mm-hmm.
which is so widely practiced
Mm-hmm.
in Tibetan Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
One knows the meaning of it also. And if that is recited,
Mm-hmm.
then won't that come under Sutrayana?
It does, yeah.
But yet it's a mantra.
Oh, doesn't that come under Sutrayana? No, it's taught in Tantrayana. Yeah. That's taught in. It's taken from a tantra taught by the Buddha of compassion.
But it deals with Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah, it's the mantra of Avalokiteshvara. Yeah. Yeah, there's no real big kind of conflict here. I don't know, it is what it is. It's not something very important, but...
I find it contradictory because...
Subhashini, can you please take the question after the session? It doesn't relate to this particular topic.
Yeah, it's not. You can talk to me about it in the break.
Yeah.
Okay, so therefore, so these 5 praises of the mantra. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge. So it's a mantra of great knowledge because it's talking about the most profound realization of that one can have on the path, the realization of the ultimate nature of all phenomena, right? So if you possess this wisdom, which is the actual mantra, it's the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature of all phenomena, then you have great knowledge. Then it's the unsurpassed mantra, because this realization of the emptiness of inherent existence, of shunyata, is the foremost realization of a bodhisattva or of a Buddha. So there's no more subtle truth to be realized. There's no more. That's why it's called an ultimate truth. Shunyata, or the emptiness of inherent existence, is the ultimate nature of all phenomena. It's an ultimate truth. So there's nothing more subtle to be realized. So the wisdom, knowing that, there's no higher wisdom to be developed. So that's why the mantra, which is essentially that wisdom, is unsurpassed. There's no greater mantra, no greater wisdom. And then the mantra equal to the unequaled. So the unequaled is of course full enlightenment, right? Buddhahood or full enlightenment, because there's no higher state that can be achieved than that. So this mantra, the ultimate mantra, is equal to the state of enlightenment in the sense that it's what brings one most quickly and most directly to enlightenment. So in that way, it's similar to full enlightenment. And then the mantra that completely pacifies suffering. It's the mantra that completely pacifies suffering. So here it's saying this because all suffering that exists, this is the fundamental teaching of the Buddha, is that all suffering that exists arises through ignorance. And through not any kind of ignorance, but a specific kind of ignorance that grasps at the self and other phenomena as being not interdependently arising, but existing independently, in and of their own right, through their own power, or from their own side. So it's by grasping at oneself as existing independently of others, and then we create this division between this fabricated and exaggerated division between self and other, feeling as a sense that we exist independently, and then other things exist independently as well. And then we divide the world up into things that we perceive as attractive and those we perceive as unattractive. And then based on that, we like and try and become, have longing for things that we perceive as attractive, and have aversion for and dislike things we perceive as unattractive. And then all the afflictive emotions and all the karma, and then rebirth, old age, sickness, and death all come about from this source, this fundamental mistake of the way we perceive ourselves and other phenomena, which is a kind of ignorance, right? So this ignorance is the source of all suffering. So then that's why he's praising this mantra as being that which completely pacifies suffering. So how does it pacify suffering? Because it's the wisdom which recognizes everything is interdependently connected, interdependently arising, and therefore totally empty of inherent existence. So it's only by knowing this, only by generating this wisdom, which sees this ultimate truth, that we can eliminate the ignorance, which is the very source of all suffering, the root of all suffering. So that's why it's this mantra. This mantra embodies that wisdom, and thereby it pacifies or eliminates suffering. So it's important to recognize, like His Holiness Dalai Lama always points out again and again. I mean, and this is one of the most optimistic kind of things about the Buddhist path, the Buddhist teaching, is that, I mean, many people, especially many people, I guess, especially I was thinking early Westerners who were like exposed to Buddhism in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But even today, many people have this similar misconception that Buddhism is a very pessimistic religion. They think Buddhism is very pessimistic because it's talking about suffering all the time, and saying that our body and our mind as it exists now is in the nature of suffering, and all the things we enjoy in samsara are in the nature of suffering. So therefore, there'll never be a source of true happiness. So if you just look at that aspect of Buddhism, it's true. It looks kind of pessimistic. But I mean, actually, I consider Buddhism to be radically like optimistic, because it's saying that, okay, there's all these problems, but all those problems arise from a fundamental mental mistake, from a fundamental way of misapprehending how things exist. So if you can eliminate that, if you can see how the way we perceive things is wrong, and then generate in its place a wisdom, or which recognizes the truth, which sees reality as it is, then unbounded happiness is possible, and it can arise from that wisdom. So, but His Holiness always points out that it's important to see that, to recognize that the reason it's possible to be free from suffering, the reason it's possible to achieve nirvana, which is freedom from samsara, and achieve full enlightenment, is because that the opposite of that, samsara and everything which binds us in samsara, is all based on a fundamental mistake, right? A fundamental misapprehension of the way things exist. So, like, if you think that, I don't know, what's another kind of fundamental, well, not a fundamental, but just an ordinary misapprehension that we might have. Like, well, usually I always go for the mathematical ones because they're very simple and easy, but I'll try to think of a better one. For example, if you think that I think of one I heard someone say recently. Well, here's one, maybe. If you think that, for example, eating meat. If you think that eating meat, like I was just watching a video about someone who, when they were very young, they really loved animals, loved like dogs and cats, and had a lot of pets, and pet mice and hamsters and things. But then they also loved to eat like hamburgers and hot dogs and all kinds of fast food in America, junk food. So they never had in their mind. He was explaining, like, in his mind he had this division between like loving all these animals on one hand, but then like loving to eat all this animal flesh on the other hand, all this meat on the other hand, and not making a connection. There being total disconnect between those two. So like a fundamental misapprehension you might have is that my eating meat, it doesn't affect any animals in any way, right? That's total mistake, because actually it does. I mean, the more we as individuals and we as society consume animals, it means more animals need to be killed, need to be slaughtered, right? So if you have a misapprehension that thinks, well, there's no connection between my eating meat and animals being slaughtered, being killed, then that's a kind of ignorance, right? So it's a kind of misapprehending the reality. So then if you investigate to see, well, okay, the meat I buy, like, where does it come from? If you follow the chain of production back, well, it comes from, this butcher shop. Where does the butcher shop get it from? They get it from, well, first they have to kill the animals, and then where do those animals come from? Well, they have to be produced by a farmer, being born, bred and raised in some farm. So if you see this, there's this whole this whole cycle of production that involves like breeding animals and then slaughtering animals and then cutting up their bodies and then bringing their meat to a shop and then cooking it and selling it, right? So once you make a connection, then once you do some research and see, well, actually, the end of that process is me and people like me consuming that meat, right? And so there's a direct connection actually between my consumption of meat and the slaughtering of animals. Then that awareness, it totally eliminates the former ignorance, right? The former ignorance that you had, that there's no connection between my consumption of meat and harming animals. Then you can't really have that anymore, right? Because your awareness of the actual fact, it totally makes it impossible to believe what you believed before, right? Because you see that it's just not true, right? That's the case. So similarly, so it's kind of like you want to look at how things are opposite. You know, it's grasping at one thing in a mistaken way is opposite to apprehending the reality. So just like, I mean, a simple example is if you think that 2 + 2 = 3, for example. So that's a very simple example. Thinking 2 + 2 = 3. Well, once you take two apples and 2 oranges and put them together and see you have 4 pieces of fruit, then that understanding of how 2 and 2 together equals 4, it doesn't equal 3 or 5 or something, that totally eliminates the misconception that 2 + 2 = 3. So that you can't have that misperception anymore, because you see that it's just wrong, right? So any ignorance which grasps that thing as something as being in a way that it's not, it's possible to eliminate that ignorance, because if you look at the reality, the way the thing actually exists, then you come to see clearly that that's wrong, right? So there's this opposite between valid cognition, which is an accurate way of seeing things, and mistaken consciousness or wrong consciousness, right? So they're like hot and cold. They can't exist at the same time in the same place. So the Buddha is saying now we have ignorance in our mind. We have this fundamental kind of ignorance grasping at the way I and other things exist in a wrong way. So but it's possible to totally eliminate that ignorance because it's wrong. It's in discord with reality. It doesn't reflect the way the world actually exists, the way we exist. So once we analyze the world and see the way we exist, see the way other things actually exist, then we generate the wisdom which sees that actually I and everything is interdependently arising. And when you search for an inherently, just independently existing thing, you can't find it whatsoever. So you realize it totally doesn't exist. So that's why it's optimistic, because although Buddhism points out that there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of misery, and most of the things that we turn to for happiness and pleasure are actually just leading us into further misery and further suffering. So in that way it looks pessimistic. But it's very optimistic in seeing, but all of those problems, they all arise from one fairly simple mistake. And once we eliminate that mistaken way of thinking, mistaken way of grasping things, then it's like a whole house of cards. It all collapses. So and in its place, once we develop wisdom, then we can create a whole new kind of existence for ourselves and gradually for all of society, based on Buddha wisdom, which is very stable and which leads to much a kind of happiness and enjoyment that we can't hardly imagine, like right now. So this is what it means. That's all referring to all of this when he says, this is the mantra that completely pacifies suffering. And then at the top of page 2, it should be known to be true, since it is not false. So he's saying just it's a mantra that expresses reality as it is. It's true as opposed to being false. And then the mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Swaha. So the essential mantra is actually just Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Bodhi Swaha. And then the Tayata and Om are added on. So sometimes you'll see the mantra written without the Tayata or without the Om. Like you might have noticed in this Spao Realm prayer book, when we recited the Heart Sutra in this prayer book, So you can see on page 82. Sorry. On page 80. It's not 82, but look at page 80 in the prayer book. So it's the same. The Heart Sutra. But you'll see it has Tayata, and then the Om is in brackets. You don't have to look, but whatever. The Om is in brackets there, because the Om is actually not, it's not an essential part of the mantra, but it's added on. In one of Nagarjuna's commentaries on the Heart Sutra, he says, you should recite this when you're feeling tired or lazy. Then instead of reciting the whole Heart Sutra or one of the other longer Perfection of Wisdom sutras, you can just recite this mantra of the Perfection of Wisdom. But you should add on the Tayata Om at the beginning. So that's why it's added. So the reason it's added actually is Tayata, well, many mantras, I mean the most essential mantra is Om Ahum. Om Ahum. So those represent, those three syllables, Om Ahum, they represent the Buddha's enlightened body, speech and mind. Om represents the body, Ah represents the speech, and then Hum represents the Buddha's mind. So in Buddhism, almost all mantras, they contain those three syllables, Om Ah Hum. Usually there's different ways of affixing those, but usually Om is at the beginning, and then Ah. Ah is an innate part of any letter in Sanskrit. It's like the lifeblood of a letter. Any letter has to, it's like, well, the life of it. I'm not sure. Tibetan said so. But it has Ah as, like in Tibetan, if you say the letter, what's the first letter? Ka. Ka of the Tibetan alphabet. First letter is Ka. So you can see it has the Ah sound. Ka, ga, ga, na, da, 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 da. They all have that Ah sound in them. So Ah comes with any letter. And then usually Hum is fixed on the end, right? So usually there's an Om on the beginning and a Hum on the end. And then the rest of the mantra goes in between. So here there's Om is the second word from the beginning, and then Svaha is on the end. But here Svaha, it has the same meaning of Hum, meaning so be it. May it be thus, may it be so. Bodhi Svaha.
Could you just tell those three things again? Om representing the body and...
Ah representing the speech, Ah, A-H, Ah, and Hum, H-U-M, representing the mind. Hum.
So that's Tibetan or Sanskrit? It's Tibetan.
That's Sanskrit, Om Ah Hum.
It's very confusing. Okay, so that's Sanskrit.
Yeah, that's Sanskrit, Om Ah Hum. Yeah, it's even more confusing.
Om is Sanskrit, but
Om Ah is also Om is, yeah.
Om, of course.
Yeah. Ah is also Sanskrit, yeah. Yeah, most of, in Tibetan Buddhism, most of the mantras are almost always left in Sanskrit.
Okay.
They're not translated into Tibetan. But the Tibetans have very bad pronunciation of Sanskrit, so oftentimes it's hard to make out like what they're saying in Sanskrit. Yeah. So but Tayata is a common epithet of the Buddha, of Shakyamuni Buddha. Oh no, sorry, that's Tathagata. I'm thinking of Tathagata. Tayata. Shoot, I read. We'll look at the.
I think the same as Tathagata. Maybe it's a distortion of Tathagata.
No, it's Tadyata. Means so it is.
Tadyata.
Tadyata. So what does it mean, Archana?
So it is, or something like that.
So it is, let's look at, actually I'm supposed to be reading from the commentary. So actually we're using a commentary on this. So look at it's the next section of the book. Actually it follows continuously, so that's helpful. So look at page 17. Page 17 in the book. So the first paragraph on that page, it says, everything up to this point is for the disciples of dull faculties. The instructions for those of sharp faculties are, therefore the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, and so forth, up to, should train in the perfection of wisdom in that way. It's for those of sharp faculties.
Which page?
Page 17. 17. Page 17. And then he says, Vimala-mitra's commentary says, it is a secret mantra because of being a consciousness and because of being a protector. Right? So that's the etymology of mantra, consciousness and a protector of the mind. As he says, the original term mantra means mind and protector. Due to this, actually the man, well, according to the commentary I just read, the man means mind and tra means protector. Due to this, all 5 paths also have the meaning of consciousness and protector. Yeah, that sentence I'm not really sure what it means. I think it's maybe a mistake. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is the path. Okay, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is the path of accumulation. Okay, yeah, so here he's dividing up those five praises of the sutra. So therefore the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra. So we're going to be flipping back and forth between page 1 and page 17. So on page 1 it says, therefore the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge. I think he says, okay, so when that phrase, when it says the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, that's referring to the path of accumulation. When it says the mantra of great knowledge, it says that's referring to the path of preparation. When it says the unsurpassed mantra, is referring to the path of seeing. And I'll explain what each of these paths are in just a little bit, in just a minute. Then the mantra equal to the unequaled is referring to the path of meditation. And the mantra that completely pacifies suffering is referring to the path of no more learning. So I'll come back to that. In accordance with what is seen by this profound perfection of wisdom, it should be known to be true. That is, if an individual meditates in this way, one will know that it is the cause of going to Buddhahood. Right? So it's true also in the sense of that if you meditate in this way, it will definitely lead you to full enlightenment, lead you to Buddha. So in that way it's also true. So now we come to tadyata. Tadyata means it is so. So, yeah. That is, it is so that samsara and nirvana are of one taste in being without true existence. Well, we'll just read through this paragraph and then we'll come back to the beginning. Gate gate means go, go. Gate gate. Yeah, means go, go. The former is to the path of accumulation, so it means go to the path of accumulation, and the later means go to the path of preparation. So the gate gate, the former is referring to the path of accumulation, the second to the path of preparation. Again, I'll explain these. There's 5 paths. I'll explain them. Padagate means to go beyond, to go to the path of seeing. So padagate means go beyond. It's go beyond, it doesn't say, but padagate meaning go beyond means go to the path of seeing. And then parasamgate means, which means go thoroughly beyond or completely beyond. It means go to the path of meditation. Bodhisvaha means to be found, means be founded in enlightenment. So bodhi, of course, means enlightenment. And svaha means so be it. So it means, may I become enlightened. So essentially the mantra means gate gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Means go beyond, go thoroughly beyond, attain full enlightenment. That's essentially what it means. Go beyond, go thoroughly beyond, attain full enlightenment. Bodhisvaha means to be founded in enlightenment. That is, attain the path of no more learning. That's the 5th path, the path of no more learning. This correlation with the 5 paths appears in Mahajana's commentary and is not clear in the other Indian commentaries. Tibetan Lamas uphold this, but it is clear that there are other ways of asserting the meaning of the mantra. Om and Swaha bless the mantra with power. The absence of Om here is incorrect because it says in the Prajna Paramita Sridhara Sadhana written by Nagarjuna, if you are tired, so this is what I kept referring to, if you are tired, recite the mantra of truth, adding tadyata and Om. Some scholars say that this mantra is not included in the tantras, thinking that it is placed in the sutra system, basically. But because the sadhanas of Nagarjuna and Dharikapa are clearly in the mantra system, there must be a context for including this mantra in the tantras. However, Kedrubje said that the sadhanas of Nagarjuna and Dharikapa are spurious, and some scholars say that they are authentic. Also, there is a commentary on the Heart Sutra in the mantra system by Sri Sima. Therefore, it seems difficult to analyze. So, yeah, Tendra Larampa doesn't really come to a conclusion whether it's part of sutra, the sutra system or the tantra system.
Here, he's saying the mantra is included in tantra and there is a problem there.
Well, he's saying that according to the sadhanas of Nagarjuna and Dharikappa, that those say that it's part of the mantra system. But that Kedrubje was one of the early Galupa scholars, Lama Tsongkhapa's direct disciple. He says that those sadhanas are not, you can't believe them. They're not authentic.
So the question
They're
is,
spurious.
so the question is whether this mantra
Yeah.
is only part of sutra
Yeah.
or whether this mantra is also there in tantra. So that's the question here.
Well, the question is kind of difficult. It's
And he's saying whether whether this mantra, whether who put it in tantra.
he doesn't. Other scholars ask, well, how did this mantra? Why is it in the sutra, or who put it in the sutra?
Or in the tantra.
Well, who put it in tantra? Well, he's just saying that Nagarjuna and Dharikappa say this. Kedrubje says this. I don't know what the case is.
Because I think the doubt seems to be whether this mantra is actually part of tantra or not.
Yeah, part of tantra or not. But I mean,
There's no question of this mantra not being in sutra.
no. It's definitely part of sutra because it's part of the sutra. Yeah. But whether it belongs primarily to like which one or the other, or if it's like a little tantra in the sutra, it's not really an important question because it's not like the practice of sutra and tantra are mutually exclusive, or you can't if you're practicing sutra you shouldn't say this mantra, or if you're practicing tantra then you shouldn't say a mantra if it's part of sutra. There's nothing like that. No. So it's kind of a small, insignificant sort of debate. Really, it's not that important. But
But the fact that it deals with the 5 paths makes it very much part of the sutras.
True, yeah. I mean, but you can't really say that because the 5 paths are the same in sutra and tantra. In tantra, there's also the 5 paths. It's more the fact that it's spoken in the context of sutra. Like, when the Buddha, we'll look at the end. But basically, when the Buddha spoke this sutra, it's spoken in the context of teaching the Bodhisattva path, teaching the perfection of wisdom according to the Bodhisattva path, according to sutra. There's no explanation in the sutra that has anything to do with methods of tantra, the uncommon methods of tantra. So the question, to really understand this debate and this doubt, we really need to ask ourselves, well, what's the difference between sutra and tantra? Like, how do you define like a sutra teaching of the Buddha or a sutra practice of the Buddha? How do you define the Mahayana Tantrayana and teachings that belong to the Tantrayana? How are you going to define that? And that's something that Lama Tsongkhapa takes a lot of time going into detail about the most significant and most important differences between Buddhist Sutra and Buddhist Tantra. Right? And that's a discussion I don't really want to go into here because it's not that important for us. But the main thing is, just to give a short answer, is the main difference is deity yoga. Lama Tsongkhapa says that deity yoga is the defining practice of Buddhist Tantra. So deity yoga means you're taking up the practice of visualizing deities, and especially visualizing yourself in the form of a deity, right? So that is totally absent in Tantra. I keep mixing up the two terms. That's totally absent in the sutra teachings of the Buddha. Right? In the sutra teachings of the Buddha, there is the practice of visualizing Buddhas in front of you, but there's never the practice of visualizing, imagining yourself becoming enlightened. Right? That's why the Tantra vehicle is called the resultant vehicle, because you take the result into the path. It means you, instead of always in the sutra path, you always practice and meditate from the perspective of I'm an ordinary being who's in samsara, and enlightenment is something way up there, and I'm striving for it. So you have the perspective of a person climbing a mountain. Like the peak of the mountain is way up there, and you're always down there climbing up the mountain. But in the perspective of Tantra is that you just imagine wow, what would it be just to be at the top of the mountain? Imagine I'm just at the top of the mountain. So you imagine yourself already at the top of the mountain, and that's the quickest way actually to get there. So it's a completely different perspective. But none of those sutra practices and none of those tantric practices and that tantric perspective is totally absent in this sutra. So, yeah, I would tend to say that this mantra is just, in sutras there are mantras, so it's part of sutra. Okay, so let's go back to the actual mantra. Tayata Om Gati Gati Pada Gati Pada Sam Gati Bodhiswaha. So the Tayata, it just means so be it, or may it. So it is. But it comes at the beginning, so it's kind of like looking forward. It makes more sense to say it's kind of like, okay, may I become like this, and then explain, and then recite the mantra, which means like, we'll develop this kind of wisdom, and then based on that wisdom progress through these 5 paths, and then at the end the swaha means, so be it. May it be as I've already stated, and the tayata means sort of, may it be as I'm about to state. So they seem to mean a similar thing, but one comes at the beginning, one comes at the end. I don't know. Archana, do you have any more knowledge of Sanskrit? Tadyata, those syllables?
There are 2 syllables, 2 words in that, tad yatha. Yatha means it is like that. Tad means that or this, I don't know.
Okay.
So that is so, or that is like this.
Yeah. So at least we have some room to like interpret.
Yeah.
The way it makes sense. Okay. Tadyata, and then yes.
In Sanskrit, people usually call tadastu. So it says, so it is.
So it is.
It is so.
Oh really?
So be
People
it.
will say that.
So be it.
Tadastu.
So be it.
So be it.
So be it.
Okay.
Tadastu.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess my doubt is, well, why is it coming at the beginning instead of at the end?
I think it's just that continuation of the therefore, so it is.
Oh, maybe it's because it's following from before. So
Yeah.
because of the explanation that's come before, then you can state that like in this way,
Yeah.
according to this way. That would make sense. Tadyata. So therefore, Om. Okay, so then Om is a very sacred syllable. So in the commentary, he just said to add Om in order to give it more power. But also within, I was saying that the most fundamental Buddhist, it's kind of the root of all other mantras, is this 3-syllable mantra, Om Hum. But and because it represents the enlightened body, speech, and mind. But actually, within Om, there's 3 sounds. Buddha's explanation is Om, O, A, Ma. O, A, Ma. This is probably same explanation in Hinduism, I imagine. O, A, Ma. So those 3 sounds, then they also embody the Buddha's enlightened body, speech, and mind. O embodies Buddha's enlightened body. A, again the speech, and then Ma, the mind. So just that one syllable then is considered to be connected with or embody all of the Buddha's enlightened qualities, meaning their enlightened qualities of their body, speech, and mind. So it's considered a very syllable mantra. It's considered to be a very sacred syllable. Tayata Om. So that's the preliminary, and that is the actual mantra. Gate gate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha. Is the actual mantra. So gate. So it means go. I don't know. Any other from you who have knowledge of Sanskrit? What else? Does gate mean something else? Gate.
Going or go.
Going, go. Okay. So let's just look at there's 5. I mean there's.
Even Geshe Damtul said that the gate is go.
Yeah. Also Tendar Laramba, our commentary says. Yeah. Gate paragate. Parasamgate. So there's 4 gates here, no? Gate, paragate, parasamgate, and then bodhi. So there's 5 parts. 2 gates, and then the paragate, parasamgate. There's 4 gates, and then bodhi is full enlightenment. So this corresponds to the 5 paths, right? So so this is the same in all of Buddha. Buddhist Tantrayana, Buddhist Mantrayana. Buddhist Sutrayana, Buddhist Tantrayana, and then within the sutra, There's the paths of the hearers, solitary realizations, and the Bodhisattva path, or the Mahayana path. So on all of these, it's the same. The structure of the path is the same. It has 5 parts. There's the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning, which is enlightenment. Right? In the context of the Bodhisattva path, the path of no more learning is full enlightenment. So here, so the path of accumulation, so let's see, so before the paths is like ordinary beings, which are not on a path. So probably most of us, I mean definitely I can speak for myself, not on any path, right? So the first gate is kind of saying go to the path. Go from being a state of not being on any path to being on the first path, the path of accumulation, right? So the path of accumulation, it's called that because the main activity that a person on this path, the main thing they're doing is accumulating merit, purifying negative karma and accumulating merit, so engaging in different virtuous actions as a way of accumulating merit, practicing generosity, practicing concentration, practicing pure morality, practicing patience, and so forth, and basically doing different things to accumulate merit, so that they have, because merit on the path, I mean, in terms of spiritual development, like merit is like the fuel in the gas tank of the car. You know, it's or the food that you eat, you know, that gives you energy. So the thing that gives energy to and gives the strength to being able to move forward on the spiritual path is having an accumulation of positive energy or merit. So that's why the accumulation, on the path of accumulation, is talking about primarily accumulating merit, also accumulating wisdom, but primarily merit. So the path of accumulation. And then the path of preparation. So preparation for what? It's preparation for the path of seeing, actually. Preparation for seeing. So the path of preparation, then the emphasis is primarily on actually on the wisdom aspect of the path. I mean, at every stage of the path, the method, which is, you know, generating renunciation, generating great compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, and accumulating merit, those are all the method aspect of the path. And then meditation on emptiness is the wisdom side of the path. Those always have to go together. In every stage of the way they go together, but at some stages there's more emphasis on one, and some stages more emphasis on the other. So at the beginning there's more emphasis on the method aspect of the path during the path of accumulation. But then from the path of preparation up, there's more emphasis on the wisdom side of the path. So preparation is the mark of, well, yeah, I'll just go through the etymology of each path first, and then go through like how you move from one to the other second, later. So preparation, so the etymology is you're preparing to have a direct insight into emptiness. So on the path of seeing. The mark of, let's say, the mark of entering the path of preparation is when you're able to combine single-pointed concentration together with an intellectual understanding of emptiness, right? So you're able to, you have this, it's called special insight. Basically, you generate special insight. So it means that because before you gain the special insight, when you can have a mind that's single-pointedly focused on emptiness, but at that time your analysis of the meaning of emptiness becomes less and less clear, right? So your clear apprehension of the meaning of emptiness becomes more clear, so that you relax from that single-pointed insight and you just engage in analysis on emptiness. But by not analyzing the meaning of emptiness, your concentration becomes weaker, right? It weakens your ability to focus single-pointedly on something. So there's these two aspects, which there's analyzing emptiness by thinking about it in a kind of logical way, and there's single-pointedly focusing on the meaning of emptiness, just using like your mental abilities of mindfulness and introspection, right? So this single-pointed focus. And these two, they harm each other, right? So this is before you enter the path of preparation. Anytime before that, when you analyze and think about something logically, your focus becomes less clear. When you just single-pointedly focus, your apprehension of the meaning becomes less clear, becomes less firm, right? But so you want to work to combine those. You switch back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until they're mutually supportive. Until instead of harming each other, they're totally mixed. So that from within, single-pointedly focusing on the meaning of emptiness, that enhances your clear understanding of the meaning of emptiness. And when you analyze the meaning of emptiness, it also strengthens your single-pointed concentration. Right? So that's what special insight is when you combine these two aspects of the mind, of single-pointedly concentrating on something and logically analyzing into one, so that instead of harming each other, they mutually support each other. Right? So it's a much more powerful way of engaging with emptiness. So once you achieve that special insight, at that point you enter the path of preparation. Right? So from that point on, you meditate on emptiness again and again, and you're preparing to. So at this point, during the path of preparation, it's all you only have an intellectual understanding of emptiness. You haven't directly perceived it, right? It's something you do with a thought consciousness. You have concepts apprehending emptiness, as opposed to directly seeing it. You know, it's just like now, if we think about chocolate cake, we only have a conceptual an understanding of chocolate cake. We don't have an experience of it because none of us have like chocolate cake right in front of us. We're experiencing it. Whereas, you know, if imagine like we never tasted chocolate cake. We never saw chocolate cake. We never smelled chocolate cake. All we had was a conceptual understanding of it. That's something totally different than if suddenly, you know, we have the chocolate cake right in front of us and we can like smell it and see it and taste it primarily, right? Then the experience of it is totally different. It's much more direct and much more fresh and much more vivid, much more profound in a way, much more informed, right? Much more in touch with reality of what it is. So on the path of preparation, then although one has achieved what's called special insight, still one just has an intellectual understanding of emptiness without having directly perceived it, having direct experience of it. So the mark of entering the path of seeing is directly having an experience of it. That's why it's called the path of seeing. Instead of just, so again, it's like before the path of seeing, you just heard about chocolate cake and what it's like, but you never saw it, you never tasted it. So, but in regard to emptiness, of course, the path is not about chocolate cake, it's about wisdom of emptiness, right? So, before the path of seeing, you just have an intellectual understanding about what emptiness is, even though it might be 100% correct and valid, and you've realized it as it is, but you haven't directly perceived it. So, the mark of entering the path of seeing is suddenly you have a like huge breakthrough, and you have a direct perception of emptiness. You directly perceive it. So that
experience.
Experiential, you directly experience it. Yeah.
So how is it the experience? What do they say? What does it feel like to really experience directly emptiness?
They say it's inexpressible. So I won't even try. Get me off the hook.
Atoms or something everywhere.
No, that's said, yeah, it's true. I mean, it's said in many sutras that for the person who's directly experiencing emptiness, it's something you can't put into words. I mean, of course, you can try to describe it, but none of it really comes very close. It's, so the best way to describe it is by analogy, and the best analogy is supposed to be like space. It's like it's a space-like experience. Instead of, whereas before you saw you and everything else as being very concretely present, all of a sudden all of that seems to be just like, just kind of like gas floating through space. And primarily what's present is just like space, the absence of what you thought was there before. I mean, that's primarily, yeah, it's a space-like experience. And some people say, as if, you know, imagine you're on a mountaintop in the autumn, and, you know, before dawn, and there's a totally clear sky, and you're just, there's a feeling of being, I mean, not only there's a feeling of perceiving space, but there's also a breakdown of this separation between subject and object. Because what you perceive, this emptiness, has pervading everything, including yourself, including your own mind, which is perceiving emptiness. It's like another analogy is like pouring water into water. You know, if you have one container of water and another container of water, and you pour the water one into the other, you can't distinguish. Within the water, there's no distinguishing, well, this water is from that container, this water is from that container. They're just totally mixed. So like that, for the subject, the person perceiving emptiness, an object being perceived, that subject-object distinction or separation is totally broken down, like pouring water into water. And there's a sense of being totally one with, unified with everything. With things. Okay, so that's the path of seeing is from the moment that you first have that experience, directly perceiving emptiness. And then, so of course, on the path of seeing, you're trying to stabilize and deepen that experience by absorbing yourself in that meditation directly perceiving emptiness again and again and again, right? Of course, you can't do that all the time. You absorb the meditation for a few hours and then you come out, and then the bodhisattva engages in activities to accumulate merit and purify negative karma, and then again they absorb in that meditative concentration again and again and again. So then the next question: well, what is the difference between? Okay, so far you see the difference between the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing. So what's the difference between the path of seeing and the path of meditation? Right?
Because there you repeatedly, consciously, or you try to conceptualize that emptiness, to realize that emptiness which you have seen in the path of seeing.
But you've already realized it. You don't need to realize it again.
Make it more stable.
You've already realized it. On the path of seeing, you already have direct realization of emptiness. Yeah, but you're already doing that on the path of seeing. You're doing that again. You're meditating on that on the path of seeing.
On the path of seeing, you have the first experience.
Yeah.
What that emptiness means.
Yeah.
That is why it says path of seeing.
That's true. Yeah.
You've seen it.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
You've experienced it.
Yeah.
Then in the path of meditation, you try to reinforce that.
But I'm saying you're already doing that reinforcing on the path. Because it's not that the path of seeing just lasts one moment. It can last years. It can last a long time. So while you're on the path of seeing, there's different stages within the path of seeing. You're already trying to do that. Actually, I'll give you the answer. So it's the difference between the path of seeing and path of meditation has to do with which objects of abandonment you're able to abandon. So the whole point, remember, the whole point of these paths is to be free from samsara. And the things that bind us in samsara is ignorance, right? But ignorance is not just like one big lump thing. There's different levels of ignorance, very gross and very subtle. Just like washing dirt out of clothes. In your clothes, there's stains and dirt, but it's not like there's just one lump of dirt. There's all different kinds. There's very easy to wash out dirt and very, very difficult to wash out stains, right? So that's like ignorance. There's very easy to get rid of ignorance and much more difficult to get rid of levels of ignorance. So on the path, when you achieve the path of seeing, you're able to abandon the most easy to get rid of objects of abandonment. So here, the dirt we're trying to get rid of from our clothes is analogous to objects of abandonment. Is what we call things to be abandoned. Does that mean what we're trying to? Which means the different levels of ignorance and the subtle imprints of ignorance in our mind that we need to get rid of in order to be free from samsara and to achieve full enlightenment. So when you achieve the path of seeing, you abandoned. Well, here, let me ask you a question. What do you think of? Well, there's a difference between kinds of ignorance that we've learned from other people and ignorance that we just intuitively have, that we instinctively have. So do you think if you have, imagine you have different wrong ideas, well, maybe I'm trying to make it really easier even. Do you think it's like, imagine we have some wrong ideas that we got from our parents. So from the time we're little babies, we're little infants, we get these kind of like wrong ideas, some wrong ideas from our parents, and we just grew up with them. So we've always thought that that's just the way it is. Whereas there's some other wrong ideas that maybe we get from, like in college, we go to some college, like some class in college, or some friends tell us something, and it's wrong. So which one do you think is more difficult, more easy to get rid of? Exactly, the ones that you acquire later, right? So it's the same in the objects of abandonment on the path. So so the ones that you acquire later are called intellectually acquired. Actually, when we go to college, we have a lot of this, a lot of intellectually acquired. Is this right, Professor? A lot of intellectually acquired, like wrong ideas that later we realize maybe that's not right. That's probably not right.
Even
So,
being part of a group,
yeah, any group.
society,
Yeah.
that you're contextualized in.
Yeah.
So it's not prejudice, it is more to do with the wrong thinking.
Well, in this case, I mean, the example I'm using is like kind of prejudice, different prejudices. And it's true, that's not only in college, in any group we associate with. Every group has its own prejudices and biases. But in this case, in the Buddhist context, it's not prejudice, it's this ignorance grasping at the way things exist in the wrong way. So basically, on the path of seeing, the very first moment of the path of seeing, having this direct insight into reality as it is, it totally eliminates all of our intellectually acquired ignorance. Intellectually acquired ignorance, which is easier to get rid of. That's all abandoned on the path of seeing. So then the difference with the path of meditation, the beginning of the path of meditation is when we develop this wisdom, realizing emptiness, to such a degree that it has the force to abandon the first level of our innately acquired ignorance. So there's a difference between intellectually acquired ignorance and innately acquired ignorance. Innately acquired ignorance is like the things that we learn, the biases that we get from our parents from the time we're just an infant. They're much more difficult to identify and get rid of. Right? So that's an analogy. So at the moment when we develop this wisdom realizing emptiness, that it's such that it's powerful enough to get rid of the first level of innately acquired ignorance, at that moment we enter the path of meditation. Right? So that's the difference between the path of meditation and the path of seeing. On the path of seeing, our wisdom is only strong enough to abandon intellectually acquired levels of ignorance, which are much easier to get rid of. This is like the very coarse dirt in our clothes. But then from the path of meditation, from the very first moment of the path of meditation, and there's many stages, there's 10 stages to the path of meditation. So from the very first level of the path, the first stage of the path of meditation, the mark of entering that or achieving that is when we're able to abandon the first level of innately acquired ignorance, which is a much more subtle level of ignorance. It's like the more subtle stains in the clothes to wash out. Okay? So then on the path of meditation, we abandon all the remaining objects of abandonment. Everything there is to be abandoned, everything else there is to be abandoned is abandoned on the path of meditation. That's why it has so many stages. And then once we finish that and we've abandoned, so when we abandon the final objects of abandonment, then we become enlightened. Right? Or, the different paths it's different, but on the Mahayana path, we'll just go according to the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path. Then, at the end of the path of meditation, we abandon the final object of obscuration. In the next moment, we become fully enlightened. Right? So that's the fifth path, it's called the path of no more learning. Because there's nothing more to do, there's nothing more to learn. You've completed your spiritual training. There's nothing more to learn. So that is full enlightenment. Right? So this first path of accumulation, is represented by Gate, the path of preparation by the second Gate, the path of seeing by Paragate, the path of meditation by Parasamgate, and the final path, the path of no more learning, by Bodhiswaha. Okay, so let's take a break there.
So this all refers to the fourth noble truth, is it? This path?
Yeah, exactly. The truth of the path. Exactly. It all refers to the truth of the path.
So it is all condensed in this, or there is more to it?
To the truth of the path?
No, to this, the noble...
the fourth noble truth.
Yeah.
You could say it's all condensed in this. Yeah. Usually when we're explaining mantras, we like to say, everything is condensed in this. So I'll stick with that tradition. But there's a lot more to say about the truth of the path. But whatever there is to say about the truth of the path, it all fits in this. Yeah.
This particular one.
Yeah, this mantra. Yeah.
So what is this mantra called?
The mantra of the perfection of wisdom.
Oh, this is the mantra of the perfection.
Yeah, this is the mantra. Taya Dam Gati Gati Pada
What
Gati
is it
Pada
last
Sam
time
Gati
that was
Bodhiswara.
talking? That was so confusing.
We're talking about the Mani mantra, maybe. We're talking about the Mani mantra.
No, this only, the perfection of wisdom.
Yeah, this is the mantra of the
What
perfection
is
of
that?
wisdom. Of normal learning. But what is the mark of entering the path of accumulation at the very beginning, the first part?
Uncontrived bodhicitta.
Wisdom and
Mental continuum.
Yes, perfect answer, madam. 100%. You get an A. Exactly. So if you're talking about the Mahayana path, which we are here, the Bodhisattva path, then the mark of going from being not on the path to being on the path of accumulation is when you achieve uncontrived bodhicitta in your mental continuum. So uncontrived bodhicitta means when effortlessly, day and night, you have this aspiration or this yearning to achieve full enlightenment in order to be of the greatest benefit to all other sentient beings. Right? So it's a selfless, it's a radically altruistic, selfless attitude, thinking primarily, seeing the suffering of all sentient beings. There's different reasons. The main one is seeing the suffering of all sentient beings. So the main cause of bodhicitta is great compassion. Seeing the suffering of all sentient beings and wishing to free them from suffering. Like that wish to free all sentient beings from suffering is the main cause of bodhicitta. But then what's different about bodhicitta is it's wishing to free all beings from suffering, then recognizing that the best way I can do that is to achieve full enlightenment. It's only by achieving full enlightenment that I can perfect all of the abilities and powers that I might possibly gain in order to work for the welfare of all sentient beings. So it doesn't mean that until you achieve enlightenment, you don't do anything for sentient beings. You just wait until you achieve enlightenment and then think, well, then I'll deal with them. But it's not like that. It's like you work for the welfare of all sentient beings along the way, but your long-term goal is always to achieve full enlightenment. So when in terms of the Mahayana path, the mark of entering the Mahayana path is achieving the uncontrived mind of bodhicitta. And the mark of entering, if you don't aspire to the Mahayana path, but rather you don't aspire to full enlightenment, but rather you aspire merely to freedom from samsara for oneself, to personal liberation. So you aspire to the hearer and solitary realizer path. Then the mark of entering that path is generating uncontrived renunciation. Right. So when you generate uncontrived renunciation, renunciation being the mind that sees the faults of samsara and has a strong yearning to be free from samsara for oneself. Right? So when you have that yearning to be free to achieve the peace that is freedom from samsara for oneself alone, and that yearning arises continuously and effortlessly, day and night, spontaneously arises, then you've achieved renunciation. Right?
But in practical terms,
Well, in practical terms, it means like from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, and even in your dreams, you continually have this yearning to be free from samsara.
but meaning, what do you do? It's one thing.
What do you do?
Yeah,
In practical
since you
terms,
have the yearning.
what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What there is that.
Well,
That's why I said in practical terms.
yeah, it all depends on your life circumstances. But, if you're a householder, like you already have a family and things, then you probably just spend as much time as you can. You take as many vows as you can, because vows are the best basis for practicing. So take the vow like not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, not to engage in sexual misconduct, and to refrain from intoxicants. At least the 5 lay precepts as a householder, and then you engage in all the different meditation practices to deepen your renunciation with samsara, and also then you meditate on wisdom, on this wisdom. So the meditation practices to deepen your renunciation from samsara are, recognizing the preciousness of the human life, the inevitability of death, the suffering of the lower realms, how the Buddha Dharma Sangha protects us from the lower realms. So strengthen your trust in and your faith in the three rare sublime ones, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and then understand the law of cause and effect and karma, and then reflect on the sufferings of all of samsara in general. But actually, the main and the Four Noble Truths. But the main practices of a person with renunciation are the three higher trainings, right? So there's a higher training in morality, and they go in order. There's the higher training in morality, higher training in concentration, and higher training in wisdom. So the higher training in morality means you would try to refrain from harming any other sentient being whatsoever, and to perfectly keep all the vows you've taken. So if you're a single person, or you don't have much responsibilities in lay life, then the best basis for achieving liberation from samsara is as an ordained person. So you could also take the vows of a novice or a fully ordained monk or nun, and then remove yourself from all the social commitments of lay life. So that's training in morality, either the morality of a lay person or the morality of an ordained person. Keeping all your vows, which basically means refraining from harming others with your body and speech, is the morality of individual liberation. And then, so the basis of on the basis of this very pure moral conduct, then you try to generate mental concentration, trying to learn to focus your attention on any chosen object whatsoever for longer and longer lengths of time, unwaveringly. So without being free from distraction, and free from also mental, like lethargy, fallacy. Having a very vivid, focused mind, which is very stable, and you can keep on whatever object you want for longer periods of time. So that's the second higher training. It's higher training in concentration. You try to generate your mental focus and clear mental focus, and that you can build to a very high degree. And then you combine that with this wisdom, understanding emptiness, which is described in the Heart Sutra. So that's the main one you try to generate. I mean, basically, if you actually have generated uncontrived renunciation, then you progress through these 5 paths, which are mainly you advance through by increasing on the path of accumulation. You strengthen your mental concentration, and you learn to combine this mind of calm abiding with a mind of wisdom, realizing emptiness, until you achieve special insight, at which point you're on the path of preparation. Then you try to generate this direct perception, showing the path of seeing, and so forth.
So first is renunciation. Then you get into path of accumulation, is it?
That's on, if you're practicing on the
Hinayana path.
the Hinayana path, the path of solitary realizer, or Shravaka? Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha. Hearers and solitary realizers. On the path of hearers and solitary realizers, when you generate renunciation, uncontrived renunciation, then you're on the path of accumulation. If you're practicing on the Mahayana path, then you enter the Mahayana path at the point of generating uncontrived bodhicitta. Right. So there's a big debate, actually. So imagine you started out practicing on the path of hearers and Pratyeka Buddhas, and you're on the path of accumulation of those. But then you meet like the Dalai Lama. You meet a Mahayana guru, and he teaches you about bodhicitta, and then you think, oh, that's way better. Then I'm going to practice the bodhisattva path. So then you already have uncontrived renunciation, but to enter the Mahayana path, then you have to generate an uncontrived bodhicitta, right?
But in practical terms, again, what does that mean?
What do you do?
The bodhicitta, yeah.
Yeah. What do you do?
I mean, it's all very well to say, yes, I want to do it, but what does it actually mean?
What do you actually do? Well, you try to, you try to, basically, in practical terms, it means you try to develop all your positive qualities, all positive qualities that you can, right? So, of course, on the bodhisattva path, you still try to develop these 3 higher trainings of morality, practicing pure morality, concentration, and wisdom. But on the Mahayana path, the morality is much more extensive, because it's not just the morality of not harming others with our body and mind. It's primarily the morality of not even harming others. On the here in Pratyeka Buddha path, it's not harming others with our body and speech. That's what I said. Mine was our body and speech. But on the Bodhisattva path, there's also the Bodhisattva vows. There's an additional 18 root Bodhisattva vows and 46 branch Bodhisattva vows. So you can take all those vows, and those vows have primarily to do with the mind, not even harming each other, not even harming other sentient beings with our mind.
So this is the bodhicitta.
Yeah. So if you generate uncontracted bodhicitta, then again the basis is the morality of the bodhisattva, which is all the morality of the individual liberation plus this additional set of vows. And then again, the concentration is the same, and wisdom is the same. But then you add on to that all the 6 perfections of the bodhisattva. So the first is generosity. So you try to practice extensive generosity. Then morality, and then patience. So you especially try to, whatever anger you have, you try to totally eliminate anger by meditating on the antidotes to anger, which are patience and loving kindness. So you emphasize meditating on loving kindness. And then enthusiasm. So you basically serve sentient beings. Like that's.
This would be true for the other part. I don't want to stop.
Not so much. On the here in Pratyeka Buddha path, the emphasis is not on like being a servant of sentient beings and doing things to like practicing extensive generosity and going out and helping sentient beings. The emphasis, I mean, of course there's some of that, but that's not a main focus. Because this self-cherishing is not a main object of abandonment on the path. Whereas on the Bodhisattva path, self-cherishing, the mind that is concerned more with one's welfare as opposed to that of others, is a big object of abandonment. So you try to generate altruism, like using your life and your energy, your possessions, your time, to dedicate to the welfare of others, dedicating yourself to working for the welfare of others. So there's more of that kind of activity, more engaging in a charitable activity.
And the 3 aspects of the Mahayana path are renunciation, bodhicitta, and
Wisdom of
realizing
emptiness.
emptiness. So the middle one is not there in the Hinayana path.
Yeah, bodhicitta. Basically, you keep trying to strengthen your bodhicitta. Even though you have uncontracted bodhicitta, you can still make it stronger and stronger and stronger. This aspiration, wishing to do whatever you can to benefit all sentient beings. That's not there in the Hinayana path. That's why it's called, that's why there's these 2 terms, Hinayana, Mahayana. The Maha, it's not that it's better path, but the scope of the intention is much vaster, right? In the Hinayana path, the scope of one's aspiration is primarily to free oneself from samsara.
But unless you are free yourself, how can you help others?
That's true. That's true. But unless you have the aspiration to help others, then you don't really generate all the qualities you need to help others, right? So you have to do both. You have to free yourself on the one hand, but you also have to strengthen this aspiration to help all sentient beings on the other hand, right? Whereas on the former, then primarily you're just concerned with freeing yourself. Because actually the end result is you abide in a state of peace. You know, if you just achieve the nirvana of the Hinayana path, the path of no more learning of the Hinayana path, it's just you're abiding in a state of peace. You're not engaging in manifold activities to benefit other sentient
How
beings.
do you benefit others?
How do you
Have
benefit?
dogs, have lots of dogs, look after them.
No, that is
That's one way, that's one
meaning,
way.
how can you, traditionally they say you can change yourself, you can't really change. Even though you have all this bodhicitta and so on.
Yeah.
How do you, how do I benefit him or you? Or if I had that, if I had reached that stage, so how do I do it? I can only be enlightened myself.
Well, there's very ordinary ways of benefiting others, like, acting as just being a friend.
No, that's true. That's normal.
Yeah.
Really. I'm just saying when you say bodhicitta, it's still
Yeah.
not. I don't want to. Stop.
No, the main way you benefit is by teaching the Dharma, by teaching the path.
Teaching.
By you yourself, that's what the Buddha did, right? That's why he taught for 46 years. After Shakyamuni Buddha became enlightened, he didn't have to travel around teaching. He could have just, retired, just stayed on the Mount Vulture's Peak in Rajgir and just quietly lead a quiet, solitary life, right? But instead of that, he's walking all the time, walking up and down the Ganga Valley, like meeting people and explaining the path to them, explaining all these different practices
So that's the main.
to them. That's the main way, teaching. Yeah. There's actually the Buddha, in one verse, he said, Buddhas don't pull beings up by the hand, by like lifting someone out of the mud. They don't transfer their realizations from their mind in the mind of others. They benefit beings by teaching the Dharma. So the main way is, you yourself, first you travel the path to liberation and enlightenment, and then you explain to others how to do that.
But even the Buddha said, no, by your own intelligence and effort only you can do it. He puts it back on the individual, doesn't he?
That's true, because all he can do is teach.
Exactly. That's
So
what
he
I'm
can't
saying.
do everything for you. You have to do for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you need the teacher.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So like that. That's the main way to benefit, is by teaching.
So you can be an example of Dharma also. You don't have to speak Dharma to others. You could be an example of...
Yeah, there's many ways of
teach
teaching.
Dharma like that? Or
Yeah,
not?
there's many ways of teaching.
Yeah.
Like that one sutra, the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha just held up a lotus. No words, just hold up a lotus. And then on the basis of that, Mahakashyapa realized he had insight into emptiness. He had a realization of emptiness just on the basis of the Buddha doing that. Symbolizing dependent origination. Like the lotus is an embodiment of dependent arising. Everything is dependent arising, therefore everything is empty of inherent existence. But Mahakashyapa was the one in the audience that's able to see that.
But even the Theravada tradition does teach the Dharma. I mean that.
Of course, it's not that they don't teach the Dharma. I would never say that. That would be one of the most heinous sins of
Yes.
abandoning the Dharma.
Yeah.
If we were to say that they don't teach the Dharma.
Yeah. So all traditions they teach the Dharma.
Yeah, all traditions. Yeah.
Why is the lotus a symbol of dependence?
Because it arises on the basis of many causing conditions, like a lotus seed and mud and water and warmth.
But that
So
would be applicable to any flowers.
That's true about the Buddha book of Take a Lotus. It's also a sign of purity. No?
No,
Yeah,
it's
because it
more,
Because it's also a sign of purity.
It arises
it's more
from
a
the
sign of purity, because in spite of being in that mire
Yeah.
and mud, it retains its purity and beauty.
Maybe he just happened to have a lotus near at hand, so he held up a lotus. If he'd had a sunflower, maybe he would have held up a sunflower. It's not necessarily that, but you're right. I mean, anything can be a symbol of dependent origination if you think about it.
Yeah, but some lotus rise above and some rest on the water. I think there's something like that.
That's true. I wonder which one it
Some
was.
of them rise up.
Oh, from the mud then.
Yeah.
From the mud then.
From the mud, some of them are.
Wherever it retains its purity and beauty.
Yes,
So that of course.
that's true. It's very
That's
beautiful.
the important point.
Although some lotuses are not so beautiful or pure.
But it's very unfortunate the BJP has taken it as its symbol.
That's what he meant.
Are they not pure and beautiful?
That's why I said all lotuses are not that pure and beautiful.
Okay. So where were we? Oh yeah, so I was talking about what is the mark of entering the path of accumulation. Right? So the mark of entering the path of accumulation, in this case we're talking about the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path. It's achieving uncontrived bodhicitta. On the Hinayana path, it's achieving uncontrived renunciation. Oh, but I was saying there's a big debate about, well, for someone who they haven't entered the Hinayana path first, they just enter first, the first path they enter is the Mahayana path of accumulation. Then they have to generate uncontrived bodhicitta, but then but to be on a path, you have to have renunciation also, right? So do they achieve uncontrived renunciation and bodhicitta at the same time? In which case, are those both like one mind, or are they two separate minds? But if they're two separate minds, because usually when you first generate a realization, it has to be manifest in the mind. It can't be dormant or at a level of subconscious. It has to be fully manifest. So can you have uncontrived bodhicitta and uncontrived renunciation both manifest in the mind at the same time? But then they're two separate. If they're in that case, they can't be two separate minds, because two totally separate minds. Like you can't be thinking, I like ice cream and like I miss my mother, both at the same time, and those thoughts both be foremost in your mind. Like you switch between one or the other, two thoughts. So then there's a lot of debate about this question. For the person who first enters the Mahayana, like, what is the renunciation in their mind? Is it at a dormant state or subconscious state, or is it in the forefront of their mind? Because bodhicitta definitely has to be manifest. Bodhicitta has to be manifest. Or is it that their renunciation is actually, their bodhicitta is like a form of renunciation? There are a lot of questions about like how that actually works. And I don't really have an easy answer for you, because it's not something I've totally sorted out myself. But
So they
anyway, it's
can't-
good for you to think about.
They can't actually generate bodhicitta without the renunciation, right?
Well,
Because the second aspect.
well, but we're not just talking about ordinary renunciation, but uncontrived renunciation.
Oh.
Yeah. Which means
All the time.
it's true, to generate bodhicitta you have to have some degree of renunciation, but uncontrived means it's spontaneously and continuously arising in your mind, like all the time, day and night. So, because if you say like, well, before you have uncontrived bodhicitta, you have to have uncontrived renunciation, then the problem becomes, but we're talking about a person who doesn't want to enter the Hinayana path, they just want to enter the Mahayana path directly. So if before they achieve uncontrived bodhicitta, they achieve uncontrived renunciation, then it means, then it means they have uncontrived renunciation, which is a path, but what path is it? If it's not the Mahayana path, because it's not bodhicitta, it's not conjoined with bodhicitta, but it's not a Hinayana path because they don't have any aspiration to enter the Hinayana path. So, but if it's a path, it has to be on one of the 5 paths. So, yeah, there's those kind of questions that come up.
It can also be what they're exposed to, because in certain countries, like Sri Lanka, Thailand and others, where the path is only the Hinayana or the Taravana path, they have not even heard of the word bodhicitta. That's what Venerable Namdev was saying.
Yeah.
Because if the person who is aspiring to attain nirvana has not heard those words, then naturally they will follow what they have learned.
Yeah, that's true, but we're talking about someone who they know about bodhicitta, they know about full enlightenment, they aspire to full enlightenment. But then, what's the order in which, or the way in which they achieve both uncontrived renunciation and uncontrived bodhicitta? Are they sequentially, do they achieve them, or do they achieve them at the same time? If they achieve them at the same time, how, or what? So, there's a lot of questions there. But anyway, that's not our concern right now. I just wanted to raise the doubts, because by thinking about it, then you might, have some insight, learn something. Yeah, one day.
For someone to enter the path of recognition, so if contrived bodhicitta is the condition.
Uncontrived.
Uncontrived bodhicitta is the condition.
Yeah.
Does that person also have a gross understanding of emptiness or not?
Yeah, that's another big question. Do they have to have a gross understanding of emptiness or not? And there's a lot of debate about it. Do you have any reasons, one way or the other? What do you think?
Yes, here it says in this chart.
Oh yeah, let's see. Look, what page is that on? Let's look at the chart.
It's no page number.
I forgot about the charts. I can find that chart. Yeah. I don't know, did Venerable Namjong explain these charts?
Yeah, he did a brief overview of the chart.
Okay. I explained some of them before, I know, but the one you're looking at, I know I didn't touch. This one, right? Yeah, okay.
Here, before the entrance, the number 1, it says inferential realization of emptiness. That was milestone.
Path of accumulation. Great compassion, non-dual awareness, mind of enlightenment.
And the first, below that there is a number of milestones. And the first milestone, there is a description below.
Oh yeah, milestones. Why milestone 1?
Inferential realization of emptiness.
But it says in brackets, sharp faculty trainees. So what it means, that brackets in parentheses, did you find it, Sebastian?
This one.
Yeah, right there, that one. Yeah. So we're looking at where it says, there's those little circles with arrows at the bottom. There's number 1, milestones. It says inferential realization of emptiness for sharp faculty trainees. So why it has in parentheses sharp faculty trainees is because sharp faculty trainees, they do realize emptiness before they enter the path. Those of dull faculties, they don't realize emptiness.
But then how would they...
Wait, even
very gross understanding of it.
Yeah, that's a better doubt. Do they have a very gross understanding of emptiness? So what do you think? Do you have any reason they would or wouldn't?
It has to be gross because the path of seeing means...
No, but here we're talking about the path of accumulation. This is before the path of
understand.
accumulation.
But you go through the path of accumulation and preparation to the path of seeing.
Yeah, but we're
Which
talking...
is experiencing emptiness.
That's true, but we're talking about before the path of accumulation.
No, I'm saying that it can only be a gross conception conceptual understanding.
Well, yeah, it's definitely not, it's not a direct, but he's,
Experiential.
no, what he's asking is, do you have to have any understanding of emptiness, even the most gross, before you achieve uncontrived bodhicitta?
Or even familiarity with the word emptiness.
Yeah, or even have heard of emptiness. Do you have to? So do you have any reason, yes or no? For
Yes,
against?
because it's a
I'm asking one new,
So Vashi,
please, madam,
Yeah.
please hold your
please,
speech.
don't keep
Wanda, do you have any?
To me, it sounds like one should have actually a familiarity with what emptiness is.
Why?
Emptiness being the vehicle through which you can actually end the suffering.
Yeah, and the suffering, yeah.
So you should have kind of believed that okay, there's a possibility of attaining the bodhi, and the bodhi, attainment of bodhi actually happens with emptiness plus bodhicitta.
Yeah, you
So
should.
if you don't have that equation in mind,
Yeah.
then where one gets a conviction that okay, you can attain enlightenment?
Because your teacher told you can. Just because your teacher said it, you believe your teacher.
So
Yeah, that's why it says a person of dull faculty. So the reason a person of sharp faculty, that they would have to have a inferential understanding of emptiness or intellectual understanding of emptiness before they enter the path is because when they're considering generating bodhicitta, this aspiration to achieve enlightenment, to free all sentient beings from suffering, before they generate that, they would stop and think, well, is it really possible to free sentient beings from suffering? Is that really possible? So a more intelligent person, they wouldn't even try to generate that aspiration to free all sentient beings from suffering without first checking to see if it's something that's really possible or not, is realistic or not. So then they would check to see, well, what would that mean? To free sentient beings from suffering, I have to eliminate the causes of suffering. What are the causes of suffering? And then they would look to see, well, if the cause of suffering is this ignorance, is a mistaken state of mind, well, it means then it's possible to eliminate that because it's a mistaken state of mind. So then they would see that, oh, well, yeah, it is a mistaken state of mind because it's a mind that grasps things as inherently existent, whereas they don't exist that way. So they would have the understanding of emptiness, and a valid understanding of emptiness. But for the question is for a person of dull faculties, not of sharp faculties, to have that aspiration to free all sentient beings from suffering, how much do they have to understand about why sentient beings suffer? Because the idea is a person of dull faculties, they don't really investigate. They would just, you could imagine someone just being like, all sentient beings are suffering, it's terrible, I want to free them all from that. And just devoting themselves to generating that aspiration without investigating to see whether it's really possible or not, just kind of blindly going for it. So if you imagine that kind of person, then do they even have to have a gross understanding of emptiness? Maybe not. I'm not sure. You could try to imagine, I don't know, to me it seems like you could imagine someone that really doesn't. It's implicit, but how would it be implicit? What does that mean?
I mean, it is granted that someone who has heard of the Bodhisattva path should have a gross understanding of emptiness, even though not the inferential realization that...
No, but you're saying should, but why? Why should? There has to be some connection between what it means to have uncontrived bodhicitta and what that entails. That you would have to give a reason that in order to have an uncontrived realization of bodhicitta, you have to have even some gross understanding of emptiness because this reason. So I'm asking you for that.
No, my question actually is whether to have an uncontrived bodhicitta, whether one should have gross understanding of emptiness or not. That's not my question.
Okay, what's your
question?
question?
My question is, for someone to enter path of accumulation,
yes.
Along with the bodhicitta, does someone needs gross understanding of emptiness?
Well, yeah, it's the same question. Because as soon as the moment you have uncontrived bodhicitta, you've entered the path of accumulation.
Yeah, that.
So that, I mean,
that
the moment.
Statement, whether is it implicit that in that statement, is it implicitly implied that someone will now already have gross understanding of emptiness?
That's what I'm saying. Some people would say yes. I mean, some scholars say yes, and some scholars say no. My opinion is probably no. Because you can imagine, if you could just imagine one type of person who maybe they could generate uncontrived bodhicitta without having even the grossest understanding of emptiness, then it's not necessary. Of course, most people do.
I mean, we take that for granted. Like before looking at these like anomalous examples, most bodhisattvas, they will have some understanding of emptiness by the time they enter the path of accumulation. 99.9% they will. But the question is it necessary? Is it even possible to generate, to enter the path of accumulation, which means generate uncontracted bodhicitta? It's the same thing. So is it even possible to do that without some understanding of emptiness? Or not? So, and it's, I mean, the same question applies to renunciation. Uncontracted renunciation. Same question applies.
It may not be necessary, Venerable, but it definitely makes the bodhicitta much more durable and stable.
Oh, definitely. There's no question about
A
that.
superficial understanding, a very superficial understanding, even dependent origination, it helps you to generate that bodhicitta. Otherwise, why should I do for others? But when you begin to think, I'm dependent on them, even I'm not talking about inherent existence, all that.
Yeah.
But because I'm dependent on them and my happiness depends on them, it makes that bodhicitta much more stable and beautiful.
Yeah, it's true, it does, but is it necessary? That's the
It may
question.
not be necessary.
I guess if the faith is very strong, and then it may not be necessary.
Necessary.
And the path of accumulation itself could last a long, long time. So that.
Yeah, I mean, hold on. There's three paths, as it says here. On the path of accumulation, there's a small, medium, and great. Right? So by the time you reach the medium, you definitely have you definitely have realization of emptiness.
So someone to have uncontracted bodhicitta, they should abide by the bodhisattva vows?
Well, that's a whole other question.
Because if there is any reference to emptiness in the bodhisattva vows, then it is implied that they have bodhisattva.
Right.
In the bodhisattva vows, if there is a reference to emptiness.
If there's a reference to emptiness. I don't think there is, though.
Because I think in tantra vows there is a reference to emptiness.
No, tantra vows there are, but in bodhisattva vows there's no reference to emptiness. But so you have the question, do you have uncontracted bodhicitta? If you generate uncontracted bodhicitta, you naturally, I think you automatically generate the bodhisattva vows in your mind stream. But before you generate it, you don't have to have the bodhisattva vows, no. But for like most of us, we have the bodhisattva vows, but not uncontracted bodhicitta. So most people would be like that. That they have the bodhisattva vows, but not uncontracted bodhicitta first. I wish we had more time. We could go through this whole chart in detail. Maybe next time.
So if before the medium path, definitely they need to have the understanding.
Yeah. Before the medium path of the path of accumulation, you definitely have a conceptual realization of emptiness. No question. I'm not sure in this before the path of accumulation here it has in that bracket on the left side of that bracket has great compassion, non-dual awareness, and mind of enlightenment. I think it means you have to have those to achieve the path of accumulation. I mean, you definitely have to have great compassion, and you definitely have to have, before you achieve uncontrived mind of enlightenment, you have, or bodhicitta, you have the contrived mind of enlightenment. But I'm not sure why it has non-dual awareness.
Also, there's a star mark, and there's a note below that is for sharp faculty.
Again,
Yeah.
see, again, the sharp
Only for
faculties.
sharp faculty.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's finish up this commentary just before we run out of time here. There's not much to go really. So I've been explaining the 5 paths. So let's look at page 17 again. So towards the bottom it says number 3, how that was admired by the teacher. We'll read through that. So, okay, the 3rd section is the way the teacher admired Avalokiteshvara's teaching. That is, then the transcendent victor rose from that samadhi. Okay, so let's look at page 1 again. Flip back, actually page 2, at the actual sutra. So flip back to page 2, but keep your finger in 17. So after the mantra, Tayata Om Gate Gate Pada Gate Pada Samgate Bodhi Swaha, on page 2, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom in that way. So basically he's saying, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, a Bodhisattva should, meditate on the wisdom realizing emptiness combined with uncontracted bodhicitta and enter the gate, the path of accumulation, then progress to the second gate, the path of preparation. Then, by directly realizing emptiness, progress to paragate, the path of seeing. And then, by strengthening that direct realization of emptiness, such that they can abandon even the innately acquired ignorance and the imprints of that ignorance, then by doing that, they progress to the path of meditation, represented by parasamgate. And then gradually on the path of meditation, they abandon the large, large, medium, and small, and each of those have a large, middle, and small, so there's 9. The 9 progressively more subtle levels of ignorance and the imprints of ignorance on the path of meditation. And then once they abandon the most subtle of those, then they achieve enlightenment, represented by Bodhisattva. Okay. So he says, so Avalokiteshvara says, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom in that way. So this is what we're talking about now, the conclusion. Then the transcendent victor, means Shakyamuni Buddha, rose from that samadhi and commending the Bodhisattva. So rose from which samadhi?
Concentration on categories of phenomena.
Exactly. Yeah. At the very beginning of the sutra, the third sentence, it says, at that time the transcendent victor was absorbed in the samadhi on the categories of phenomena, called perception of the profound. So it means he was looking at all phenomena, seeing how all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So then the transcendent arose from that samadhi and commending the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, the superior Avalokiteshvara, said this, well done, son of the lineage, means Bodhisattva. It is just so. It is like that. So just as you have described, that's exactly how a Bodhisattva should practice. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas admire this. Okay, so all the Buddhas, so even the Tathagatas admire this, means all the Buddhas of the past, when they were Bodhisattvas, they practiced like that. So that's how all the Bodhisattvas of the present and the future should also practice. And if they do that, then all the Tathagatas, the Buddhas, rejoice, and they're practicing that way. So that's actually the conclusion of the praise. And then there's this concluding verse. The transcendent victor, having said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, the superior Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised the words of the transcendent victor. Okay. So now back to 17. So how that was admired by the teacher. The third section, in the way the teacher admired Avalokiteshvara's teaching, that is, then the transcendent victor rose from that samadhi, etc., praised the words of the Tathagata. The meaning is easy to understand for the most part. His saying, well done twice, is words of sincerity, not of number. It is just so, means he's just being sincere or emphasizing that it's very good what he said. It is just so, it is like that, means Avalokiteshvara, your explanation is just like the mode of being of all phenomena. It means basically you've explained the mode of being of all phenomena, the way all phenomena exist accurately. I have understood it like, what I have understood is like that. So it means what I, the Buddha, the way I've understood things is just as the way you've expressed them. The words, the transcendent victor said this, and having said this, in the prologue and at the end of the text are words added by with the permission of the Buddha. Shariputra's question and Avalokiteshvara's answer are words spoken through the blessing of the Buddha. Well done, even the Tathagatas admire this, are words spoken from the mouth of the Buddha. So there's three different, the reason he's saying this is, there's three different kinds of speech of the word of the Buddha. There's three different kinds of speech. I described right at the beginning, but the three kinds, actually there's many different kinds, there's much more than three. There's 12 actually, I think, or at least 6. There's quite a few different kinds. But the 3 kinds mentioned here are I'll just use the labels here. Words added by the permission of the Buddha. So there's the Buddha's word, which is added by the permission of the Buddha. So at the beginning of all the sutras, when it says, "Thus did I hear at one time," that's actually the word of the Buddha, but it's not spoken. It's not like the Buddha said that, because the Buddha's not going to, because "thus did I hear at one time," it's all spoken after the Buddha died. So after the Buddha died, he's not around to say, "Thus did I hear at one time." And also, he's the one teaching the sutra, so it's not like he heard, he's the one speaking. Right? So those words are added. Before the Buddha passed away, he told Ananda and the other monks, like, after I passed away, when you recite my teachings, you can add these words on the beginning to indicate that it is actually an authentic word of the Buddha. The reason it indicates being authentic is because the person is saying, "Thus did I hear." So when we recite the Heart Sutra, we say, "Thus did I hear at one time," we're just repeating what the sutra says. But actually the first person to speak that sutra after the Buddha passed away, they're indicating that I actually heard this from the Buddha's mouth. So that's how I know that it's something the Buddha actually said. It's not something made up by someone else. Because I was there. I heard it being spoken by the Buddha. So that's why it says, "Thus did I hear at one time." So that's at the beginning of all the Buddhist sutras. And those words it's considered to be actually the word of the Buddha. Again, because the Buddha said you should put those words on the beginning. So to be the word of the Buddha doesn't have to be spoken from his mouth. It has to be spoken through his authority, or by his power, or by his blessing. So this is one kind of word of the Buddha, meaning it's called by the permission, added with the permission of the Buddha. So that's why this is the words, "The transcendent victor said this," and "having said this," and "thus did I hear at one time." Those are all that kind of speech. And then the next is Shariputra's question and Avalokiteshvara's answer are words spoken through the blessing of the Buddha. So this it highlights a very strange thing about the Heart Sutra. Like, this is, usually when we think of a sutra, we think of a teaching the Buddha actually gave. But in the Heart Sutra, all the Buddha says is, he only says,
Well done.
yeah, well done, son of the lineage. It is just so. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas admire this. That's all the Buddha says, actually, from his mouth. Everything else is spoken by Shariputra or Avalokiteshvara, right? So then it's a question. Well, how can this be really a teaching of the Buddha if it's actually a teaching of Avalokiteshvara? So this is the way explained. That actually Shariputra asked a question, and Avalokiteshvara gave that answer through the power of the Buddha's blessing. So the Buddha he's like, it's kind of like a sort of clairvoyance. It's like through his mental power, he's moving the mind or blessing the mind, or kind of affecting the mind of Shariputra to ask this question. It's like he's planting in Shariputra's mind the desire to ask, the thought to ask this question. And it's because of that Shariputra asked that question at that time. And then when Avalokiteshvara is to answer, it's like the Buddha's blessing him to think, oh, I'll as a reply, I'll say this. It's through the power of the Buddha's blessing. Right? So yeah, that's very interesting to try to imagine, well, how does that work? And you should look at your own experience and see, have I ever had an experience like that where I feel like some thought or inspiration to do something arises not of my own volition, or not due to forces in my own mind, but due to forces of someone around me, someone else affecting me, and their mind affecting me? It's a very interesting thing to look at. So definitely if you're around like very holy beings, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche or His Holiness Dalai Lama or other very powerful teachers, you'll definitely have experiences like that, where thoughts come into your mind and you're really not sure like where that came from. I mean, and it's probably not only the case on the positive side. If you're around also very, very malevolent forces, it can also happen that through the force of someone or some environment, that you have some kind of thought that you would have never imagined thinking that. Ordinarily, you would never think something like that, or feel something like that, but suddenly it comes. So anyway, in the sutra, in the case of Shariputra and making this question, Avalokiteshvara giving this answer, those words that they speak are all considered the word of the Buddha. But again, it's not from the Buddha's mouth, it's through the Buddha's inspiration, through the power of his blessing. So therefore, it's called spoken through the blessing of the Buddha. So that's the second kind of speech. And then the third kind of speech mentioned here are, well, the easy one. Even so well done, even the Tathagatas admire this, are words spoken from the mouth of the Buddha. So of course words spoken through the mouth of the Buddha are very easily recognized as the word of the Buddha. There's some other kinds of speech of the Buddha. Okay. There's like well, another one is like there's a speech of the Buddha that comes from inanimate objects also. It said the Buddha can bless inanimate objects to resound with sound. So this is mainly, we don't experience it, it's mainly in the Pure Lands. When a person becomes fully enlightened, also through the same forces that create them as an enlightened being, they also create an enlightened environment. It's like a heaven, like a Buddhist heaven. So in that environment, also through the force of the Buddha's merit and wisdom, then even the trees and the plants and the rivers and streams, all the sounds in the Buddhist Pure Land, they all are sounds of teaching Dharma. They're all explaining Dharma. So that all is a speech of the Buddha also. And then even it's said that some beings could hear, like Shakyamuni Buddha has an Ushnisha, this crown protrusion, that there's one sutra that where the Buddha emanated from his crown protrusion, he emanated a sutra, gave a teaching. So some beings with very clear mind, very pure mind, they could hear the teaching being emanated from a part of the Buddha's body. So it's said that even the Buddha's body, from parts of his body, he can teach, and not with gesturing, but with like beings hearing the teaching coming from part of the body. So that's a different kind of speech. Yeah, I don't remember any others right offhand. Anyway, there's several other kinds of speech I remember right now. Okay, so that's that, and then let's look on page 18. This is just a short discussion. It's not very important. Just read. With regard to the way to overcome demons through reciting the sutra, Kedrubje refutes this in his general presentation of the Tantras, saying, regarding the way to overcome demons, those in prayers, such as the clear light and the prologue, are fabrications. There are, however, statements. So the clear light and the prologue, I'm not sure. Those are some sutras, some tantras or commentaries on tantras. I'm not sure which ones. But he's saying those are fabrications, meaning you can't believe those. There are, however, statements such as the king of gods, Chakra or Indra. There are, however, statements such as the king of gods, Sakra Indra, thought about the meaning of the profound perfection of wisdom and recited it in order to overcome sinful demons. So I wish there was a footnote for that indicating where that quote is from, but I don't see one. So I'm not sure where that's from. Because it might be in one of the longer versions of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. But because those words are similar to words in the 8,000 stanzas, I think that means the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And because, moreover, there are instructions that are said to have been given by Nagarjuna, that it is permissible to recite the sutra in order to overcome demons, it should be analyzed. So again, he doesn't give a conclusive answer, he just says maybe it's the case. It should be analyzed. But I think what that discussion is referring to is again in the prayer book, at the end of we recited that thing where we clapped our hands at the end of the Heart Sutra. It's referring to that you can recite the Heart Sutra and then say these other mantras, and by doing that you overcome different demons or harmful beings or harmful forces that are trying to disturb your practice, that you can overcome them by reciting the Heart Sutra. So it's still commonly done. So I think in the tradition they accept that you can. That's why, did you ever wonder why oftentimes in formal teaching events, especially with His Holiness or even here sometimes, we recite the Heart Sutra first? The reason is to dispel negative forces that might disturb the teaching and distract the mind of the audience or the mind of the teacher, or make conditions arise such that the teaching can't be completed, it can't be given. right? Because always there's a belief that there are all kinds of malevolent forces in the world, and even malevolent beings like spirits that we can't see. That when they see a virtuous activity happening, they try to create obstacles and create disturbance. So as a way of dispelling those beings, not harming them, but like protecting ourselves from them, protecting the environment from them, then one way is to recite the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, because it's a very powerful, virtuous thing to recite and reflect on the meaning of the sutra. Similarly, in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, there's very famous lines in the Diamond Cutter, because the Diamond Cutter Sutra, it's also teaching about emptiness, but it says in there very clearly that wherever someone recites that sutra or teaches it or reflects on it or writes it, then that place becomes a temple, becomes like a sacred place, becomes a holy place. So again, there's the idea that by doing something very virtuous, like reciting or thinking about a sutra in a place, it not only affects you and your mind, it affects the environment in a very positive way.
So even if you say it in your mind, recite in your mind?
Yeah, if you recite in your mind, even better. You know?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, of course, if you recite in your mind and vocally, even better. But if you compare like just saying it but not thinking about it, and just thinking about it but not saying it, it's better to think about it. Right? So often we just recite things without thinking about it. We just verbally we do, but mentally we don't do. No? That's not so good, not so beneficial. Much better to think about it. Yeah. The concluding verses I won't read. It's just kind of, he's just being humble, saying, I don't really know much, but whatever, I've just written this anyway. I hope it benefits some people. You can read on your own. So that concludes for today. Are there any final questions? Okay, if there's no questions.
What are the qualities of enlightenment?
What are the qualities of enlightenment? Well, like the Buddha said, even if I had countless tongues and I explained until the end of time, I could never express them all. So no, the qualities of enlightenment, mainly they're described as the qualities of the Buddha's enlightened body, the physical body, which there's 32 marks and 84 signs. There's many aspects of the Buddha's body, but the main one is it's very attractive and inspiring to see. Then there's qualities of the Buddha's speech. The main one is that the Buddha always speaks what is true and speaks in a way that's very pleasing to hear and very inspiring and generates enthusiasm in the listener. But explains the truth, the way things are. And then there's enlightened qualities of the Buddha's mind. Those are primarily qualities of great compassion and wisdom, great wisdom. But then you can elaborate on all of those very much. If you'd like to know more, you look in there's the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, or the Path of the Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand in the Lamrim section in the library. In the first volume of the Great Treatise of the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, in the Refuge section. In any of the Lamrim text, in the Refuge section, then it describes the qualities of the Buddha, of enlightenment. Okay, so let's dedicate. So on page 99 in the prayer book, yes?
Thus profound, perfect perception which the Buddha was engaged in when this sutra was started. Does it mean the whole question of emptiness?
Yes. Yeah, profound refers to emptiness. Exactly. So it's the perception of all things being empty of inherent existence. So let's, this verse on page 99. So think of all the merit we've created and rejoice. And we especially think of any bring to any mind, any persons or purposes you'd like us to pray for. Bring those intentions to mind. So we especially remember Saket Metta, who is a member of the center, recently had a heart attack and is still recovering, but may he quickly fully recover. And then all the members of the center, volunteers, anyone who comes to, thinks about, sees, hears, is related to the center, and FP, and all the fellow students of our gurus, of Salastana Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and all beings everywhere, and may they be free from every sickness and illness. If they are sick or ill, may they quickly recover.
If they've recently died, may they quickly take a precious human rebirth with all the conducive circumstances to follow whatever spiritual teachings and guidance is most suited to their disposition. And in all our lives, may we never be separated from a fully qualified Mahayana Guru. May all of our actions, both as individuals and as a community, as a Dharma center, never displease the mind of the Holy Guru, but always be pleasing to their mind, and may we fulfill all of their wishes and advice for us. And may the Buddha Dharma spread and flourish, may it not decline. Where it has declined, may it flourish again, especially here in India, South India especially. And may the lives of all of our gurus be long and stable. And again, may we meet them again and again and again throughout all of our future lives until we achieve full enlightenment. So we can read this verse of dedication. I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losam Drakpa to shine forever. And then turn to page 101. So next page, page 101. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Legtsok, please remain until samsara ends. So we'll conclude there. So thank you all very much for your participation.